selling your soul or parts of it. When we dilute our message, when we don't share our message, we are stopping the parts of our soul from showing up on this planet, which is one of the major reasons many of us have come. Constantly in our life, we're coming face to face with situations that challenge us to hold our power, to hold our message, to hold our unique expression, rather than squash them and hide them. And if you are a recovering people pleaser like myself, you'll know that this is an ongoing challenge. This is an ongoing life theme. And it's okay if it is a gradual climb, a gradual curve. There are many very legitimate reasons why a person dilutes parts of themselves. And for many of us, it goes back to somehow surviving, whether it's surviving in the physical world in this life or in past lives, or even being safe in a community, society, or tribal situation. Because in the times of the tribes, even up until parts of the world today, it's very important to go with the flow and not have a unique message, because that can really cause you to be excluded. And some of us have echoes of that in our soul's memories, where it really wasn't safe to bring our full essence, our full gifts, and our full message to the world. So a lot of it has to do with deep fears. So we're transitioning into a world that really requires our full essence, our full unique expression. So on one side, we know that, and we know what that is. And on the other side, there's this selling out, this diluted thing that we do. Carolyn Myss describes this as the prostitute archetype. It's a survival archetype. And she says that the greatest acts of prostitution are not in the back alleys of cities. She says that energetic prostitution is selling a part of your energy to a dominant person or group in exchange for safety, in exchange for housing, in exchange for salary. And when we do that, we engage in energetic prostitution. This can show up in many practical ways. Maybe you see yourself on this list. And this is coming from my personal life experience, so I would say I'm an expert in this topic. People pleasing, laughing when something isn't funny, agreeing when you don't really agree, not speaking up on behalf of an underdog, giving when you've already overgiven and then becoming depleted, unable to give to yourself or anyone who shows up next. Thinking that an authority figure or a teacher has better answers about your life than you do. Giving a slap in the face to your inner guide or higher self. And I want to really reiterate that there's no judgment about this. It's just a concept or a part of our life for many of us that we should become really aware of. We have eternity, we have infinity to figure these things out, to experience them, and then decide how we want to shift them and change them. So there's no judgment. But the question is, how long do you want to stay in a diluted state? How long do you want to sell parts of your soul? Some of us need more time before we're ready. And then there's other parts of us, other ones of us who really are ready to bring a little bit more of a concentrated message. These are deep and old ways of being that sometimes our parents, our grandparents, and other ancestors showed up their whole lives in. They didn't see any alternatives. Many of them were in victim mode, especially women who were living in times of extreme patriarchy, where speaking up would actually result in issues of their physical survival. This can also be really small things. Like once you start to take a look at your everyday, I've noticed myself eating things when I'm really not even hungry, just to be polite to whoever's serving it, not telling people how their behavior makes me feel. And when we stop doing these things, we don't even have to be outspoken or aggressive. We don't have to be outspoken or aggressive. But when we just put a stop to these behaviors and come into a more neutral space, that itself is a form of soul retrieval, as opposed to the selling of parts of the soul. And this energy conservation, this is a life work. This is part of the great work. This is an ongoing project for most of us. And as we hold on to these parts of our soul more closely and more tightly, it can result in more intense challenges coming up. When we aren't standing in our sovereignty and we aren't speaking up and we aren't showing up in unique ways, no one's going to come and challenge us. We're not a threat to anyone. We don't question the way that things are. We're going with the flow of the way things are. But the way that things are in this matrix is really not life-giving. So we're kind of going with the flow of a very old way. The matrix system doesn't care about you. It cares about itself. So when you hold your unique message, when you hold your dignity, really, that system will start to notice you, whether it's the people around you, whether it's rules, whether it's just general criticism from your environment. You'll start to get noticed more and more. And that's just the way of it. It can get kind of tough. It can get to be a tight squeeze. But this is the way of it. One of my favorite authors, Elizabeth Hage, said that we are not judged by a God outside of us, but it's we ourselves who speak our own verdict. So this is really between you and you. It's really between me and me. So there's really two paths. Once we become aware of this and we realize this is real, or we really decide to look at this, we realize there's two paths. There's the path of continuing the way that we've always done it, with our people-pleasing nature, not ruffling any feathers, or the path of being completely on a commitment to authenticity. It doesn't mean we're fully authentic, but we're committing to showing up in the more authentic ways every time that we can remember to. Those are the two paths. And in Elizabeth Hage's book on the archetypes of the tarot, it's called The Wisdom of the Tarot, she compares these two directions to tarot card, I think it's number 6, which is the Lovers, or the parting of the ways in some interpretations. And so I'm going to read an excerpt from it. And it goes, how often does it happen that, for instance, a doctor, a scientist, an artist, or a businessman must choose between easy success, for which, however, he must sell himself and give up his inner conviction, and a hard life, which, while allowing him to act according to his conviction, denies him worldly success or material comfort? There is the case of a man like Bauckland, to whom an art dealer promised a large sum of money if he would sentimentalize a straight-necked swan in one of his paintings by bending its neck in a rather mawkish manner. Bauckland thought of his starving family, hesitated for a moment, and then replied, "No, I cannot do that. In this painting, the swan holds himself erect." And although the Bauckland family continued to live very frugally, He did not sell his conviction, his self. Further examples worthy of mention are Luther, who rejected the high ecclesiastical office offered to him by the Pope as hush money, preferred to let himself become the victim of religious persecution rather than betray his belief. Rembrandt suffered the abject poverty and near starvation in order to explore the secrets of light and shade, instead of portraying the rich men's wives as beautiful women in his paintings, which would have made him wealthy in no time. Many people experience this parting of the ways in themselves and know what it means to sell oneself to the devil. Jesus of Nazareth experienced it in the wilderness with the tempting of the devil. He was promised the kingdoms of the world if he would renounce his faith and do all that was commanded of him. How many people have stood at the same parting of the ways and had to drive away the devil with the same words, "Get behind me"? So the goal is to become self-sustaining, being sustained by the inner guide, being sustained by the God inside, energetically, so that we don't have to sell our soul or parts of our soul. And when we do that, we aren't going to be alone. It's going to create a message, like a lighthouse, that beams to the others who are on the same trajectory, so that we find them and we can collaborate with them in a way that doesn't require us to sell our soul.